In this section, we will be talking about exploitation. And let me start by defining the objective of this section. Usually in hacking, there is two different methodology. First one depend on the user error. So for instance, I create a malicious code and add it to a PDF file and send it to the victim and hoping that he will open this file by email or whatever. Or I'm sending him an SMS or email with a link and hoping that he will click on the link. In all the way, I'm depending on his weak awareness or that he will do a mistake. The second methodology is the most effective methodology, which is depending on the weakness of the system. So I'm scanning the system, I'm getting what operating system they have, what application is running, what port are open, what service are there. And we saw earlier in a previous lecture how to get such information using Netcat and using Nmap and so on. And then start searching for a weakness, a vulnerability, and start searching for an exploit, which is a program to hack the system through this vulnerability. It's more effective, and this is because I do not depend on any one mistake. I do not wait for the user mistake or the user error that he will click on the link or not. No, in this case, regardless of the user, how careful he is, I will still be able to compromise the system. So during this section, we're going to see how to do that. First, in this lecture, I'm going to show you how complicated this was before. And then I'm going to show you a framework, a very famous framework called Metasploit, which made this process very, very easy. So the first lecture will be just a proof of concept, showing you how to do that, or how we used to do that before. And it was complicated, but don't get upset. Next lecture will be much more easier because I'm going to introduce to you a new framework that made the exploitation part very, very easy without any prerequisite. You don't need to know any programming language. You don't need to know anything. So first, let's see how it was complicated, because if you don't see how hard it was, you will not appreciate this framework. So let's see. In my case here, I have two virtual machines. I have the hacker machine and the victim machine. And assuming that I did some research earlier, I did gather some information about the victim machine. I know that he's running Windows XP. And I know some application, I know the port and everything. And then using those information, I start looking for weakness. And there is a lot of way for doing that. But I'm going to point to some of the public websites. So you can go to this website, securityfocus.com, where you can search any product, software or hardware. It could be Microsoft, it could be Linux, Unix, Android, anything. And once you click, it will show you all. So in my case, I choose Microsoft. It show me all the Microsoft product. Let me choose Windows XP. So I'll choose Windows XP. Let's go down. And once I choose Windows XP, it will show me all the vulnerability in Windows XP. And if Windows XP has more than one release, it will show me on the third drop box all the service pack or release. So as you can see, those are the vulnerability or the weakness in Windows XP. We have around 11 pages. And you will find in any product, even the newest product, you can find Microsoft Windows Server 2012, Microsoft Windows 10, any other product. So using such public site, and there is other public site, like for instance, Security Tracker, or there is ExploitDB. So many websites will help you to exploit db.com. Oh, it's closed here, not a problem. But what I'm saying is, as you can see, those are the Windows XP, which is my victim machine vulnerability. Now, I will take one specific vulnerability that was very, very common in any Windows XP or Windows Server 2003, which is the DCOM RPC. So this is one of the vulnerability inside Security Focus. If you check, it will show you all the system or all the operating system affected with such vulnerability. It will give you a discussion which will be it will explain the effect of the vulnerability on the system, but the most important point will be the exploit here. It will give you the programs that you can use to compromise the system through this vulnerability. But the problem was that most of the time those vulnerability was written in different language. It could be C, it could be Ruby, it could be Python. So let's see. In our case, I will take this one. It was written in C. And as you can see, it's, you need to know some C language, because sometimes, maybe this one is a simple one, you don't need to modify anything. But sometimes you need to modify in the code by changing the IP of the victim or changing some information. But let me show you how we used to utilize this vulnerability. In my case, I already downloaded this vulnerability in my hacker machine. So getting back here, let me show you in my computer in the C drive, and there is a folder DCOM exploit. Here you go. And this was the vulnerability, as you can see, that I downloaded from the website. The problem was you cannot use the vulnerability this way. You have to compile the vulnerability and it become an executable. Now, this is not inside the scope of our course. I mean, I don't want to waste time showing you how to compile a C program, because maybe you'll find the program or the exploit with different language. But I'm just showing you the process in general, how it used to made, how we used to do that. And then I'm going to compare that, do the same attack, but using the Metasploit, which is much more easier than that. So once I received, or once I compiled the C file to an exploit, then I can launch it. So let's go to the command line and let's go to the C drive, and I'm going to go to the same path where I DCOM exploit. This is the same path where I kept the file, the exploit, and then I just need to type the command and it will tell me how to use it. So if I type DCOM exploit, then press enter, it will tell me the proper way for using that. Is that the usage of this command should be DCOM exploit, then the target ID, then the target IP. I know the target IP because, once you plan to compromise system, you should get the IP. And I believe you should be aware how to get an IP. But what is the target ID? He gave you a list here with the target ID. If you're using Windows Server 2000, this is the target ID. In our case, I think it's Windows Server number 5, which is Windows XP Service Pack 0. So now I need to repeat the command and type the target ID is number 5 and then the target IP. Now, how did I know that this is Windows XP Service Pack 0? If you get back to the Nmap lecture where I explained how to scan a system and know what operating system and know the port opening and service and so on. By the way, same concept apply on Android device. This is a proof of concept on Windows, but what we are trying to say, you can search for a vulnerability for an Android and follow those steps. But anyway, so I run this exploit. He said, okay, it's fine. The exploit was successful and he opened a port on the victim machine 4444. So now I think we have an open port, a port that has been opened remotely on the victim machine. I just need to connect to it. How to connect to a port remotely? We explained that. We have a very, very useful tool called Netcat. So we can type Netcat 192.168.1.114 and then space and the port number 1234. And here you go. We are now on the victim machine, and if you need to check, if you type now ipconfig, you'll see that you are on the ipconfig. You're going to see that you are now, this is a shell on the victim machine. You can create a user, you can create a folder, you can do whatever you want. Now, my point from this lecture was just to show you that it was complicated, and this is a very simple exploit. Some of them are so complicated that you need to open the file and you need to change inside and then compile it. It was not that easy. It was very powerful, but not easy. Now, according to that, a very good framework called Metasploit has been introduced. Actually, there's many frameworks, but this was a free one where it was facilitates the process. You don't need to know any language, you don't need to know any coding. You just need to know what vulnerability you are looking for, and he's taking care of everything. So let's see how to repeat the same attack but using Metasploit.